of Arizona. And again, these Texas cases up 1,300%. As we've been reporting, the state of Texas has been struggling to deal with this surge. Hospitals are being overwhelmed by the growing number of patients, but they're not the only ones being stretched to the limit. So are the first responders, those called upon to transport dozens of COVID-19 patients to the hospital every day, and by doing so, even though it's their jobs, putting their own lives and families at risk, just as we witnessed during New York, as you mentioned, during the bad old days in April. Correspondent and Texas native Garrett Hake spent time with some paramedics in Fort Worth. Garrett is with us now. Garrett, what's it like out there?
Brian, this is difficult and dangerous duty for these paramedics in the best of times, and these are far from the best of times. We're in 100-degree day territory out here in Texas, and these paramedics are doing, in many cases, the same work ER doctors and nurses would be doing without the benefit of an ER around them, going out on dozens of calls that they know are COVID calls, in many cases for people who don't even want to be transported because they're afraid of coming to the hospital. They want to be checked out and told if they are okay to stay home because they feel that's safer. And it's not just the COVID calls. If you get called to a gunshot or a car crash or to any of the other myriad things to which a paramedic may be called, these folks have to treat those calls as if they're responding to someone who is COVID positive as well. They have to protect themselves. They have to protect the hospitals with which they work. And in many cases, they have to protect their own families. I interviewed one paramedic yesterday who told me he is paying for a hotel room every night he has a shift out of his own dime to make sure he doesn't bring the virus home to his son, who's a teenager. Take a listen to what he told me.
Even when I'm home, me and my son used to be really close. We'd always sit real close to each other. And since this whole COVID thing's been going on, I make sure that we stay, you know, decent amount of distance from each other, just because I'm afraid that I would potentially give it to him if I bring it home with me.
He's got to be so proud of what you're doing.
I'd like to think so.
So important and brave work being done here. And I think it's important to note this has been being done for months. I mean, the pandemic response in Texas started the same time it did everywhere else in the country. Only now are they seeing this incredible spike here. And the risk of exhaustion and fatigue and burnout is very real. Nicole?
It's unbelievably sad situation, and the sacrifices they're making are always worthy of our attention. Thank you, Garrett Hake in Fort Worth, for bringing us that report.